Hello, YouTubers, friends, compatriots, bootlickers, shills, death slaves, serfs, peasants, vassals, Manchurians, Cantonese. I'm a useful idiot, and today I want to talk about China. And I know I apparently am one of a minority that thinks we are not going to go to war with China. And I've explained that a lot in other videos, including a video called China is Not Our Enemy. And I've been gratified to find some reports about what is shaping U.S. policy towards China, and I'm very gratified to see that it echoes exactly my feelings about what U.S. foreign policy is going to be in the future. And specifically, two reports. One came out in 1997, and it's a neoconservative report describing containing and collapsing China. And that is the strategy that I put forth as the future strategy and, frankly, present strategy of the U.S. towards China. This article was written by Robert Kagan, printed in the Weekly Standard. And the article is called What China Knows That We Don't, the Case for the New Strategy of Containment. And his whole premise is the luring China into its place in the international order, coupled with containment. And I think that's what we see in the present world, why we see such a symbiotic relationship with China. And we're more than happy to give China lots of advantages economically and militarily and technologically in order to kind of lure them into the international order and make it known that they're better off joining us than fighting us. But of course, China is a very ancient civilization, and they are a very proud nation, as they should be. And they have their own ideas about what they would like their destiny to be. But I'll get more into that. So anyway, Kagan refers to the international order and says, quote, "The present world order serves the needs of the United States and its allies, which constructed it. And it is poorly suited to the needs of the Chinese dictatorship trying to maintain power at home and increase its clout abroad. Chinese leaders chafe at the constraints on them and worry that they must change the rules of the international system before the international system changes them," unquote. So that's what I was just talking about. Of course, Chinese worry that they need to change the rules of the game now. And I think that's why we see the furious activity of the Chinese on all fronts, in the infrastructure development, the international investment, consolidation of resources, expansion of their military, flexing their muscles. It's all part of a nation trying to make sure they are taken seriously and perhaps take their rightful place in the world international order that is being shaped. So let's return to the Kagan article. He goes on to say, quote, "The West's goal is to collapse China's government. By embracing the Chinese, by exporting our Western ways through our Western goods, we will bring them down," unquote. And then he goes on to say, this can be achieved also by helping them expand their economy, creating democratic pressures. And I find that exactly in line with where I think it's headed. We will help them expand their economy, and that's one of the ways that we will ultimately undermine them. And this is not unlike ways that we undermined the Soviet Union and ended up co-opting Russia somewhat into the international order under Gorbachev. So anyway, but the expansion of the economy in China, obviously, as we've seen in recent Chinese history, is creating a lot of pressures from dissidents and resistance and democratic pressures, especially from a youth class that's being exposed to the world through the internet. So anyway, the U.S., of course, will use that. And like I've also pointed out in other videos, they will use the same strategy that we've seen in the Middle East and other regions of the world, destabilizing China, perhaps, like we are going to destabilize Pakistan. We've destabilized numerous other nations. In fact, Kagan goes on to say, quote, "There is also the very real danger that the networks and influence China is building regionally and globally can be toppled and co-opted by covert destabilizations similar to what is unfolding in the Middle East." So the United States plans to use that same technique regionally around China, including, as it turns out, Thailand and Myanmar. So the U.S. is actively helping insurrections, and I recently did a video on Myanmar, also known as Burma, and as it turns out, we're helping destabilize that country as well, and Thailand is also included. So anyway, there you have it. My theory about the future of our policy being to contain and isolate both Russia and China. And that's what getting rid of all these other rogue nations. We have to get rid of Syria and Iran first, and then we will be well on our way of encirclement and isolation of both Russia and China. And then it will be interesting. And then I think it's more in everyone's interest, particularly because of the integration of economies globally and the influence of transnational corporations over our governments and foreign policies and resources, that eventually it will make more sense not to have a confrontation. But, of course, all bets are off if certain events unfold. Sometimes things take a life of their own. Case in point, the way World War I started with a spark. Nobody wanted the wars, and yet everybody was drawn into it. So then I want to get to the second report, and that's one by called the Strategic Studies Institute String of Pearls report from 2006, and it details the exact same strategy of containment of China. And it also talks about integration or containment, the idea of bringing China into the fold where it makes more sense for them to join on board with the new order, or to contain them and then destabilize them and strangle them off. And that's also one of the motivations that we see now with the Arab Spring in Africa, and that's countering Chinese investment, Chinese access to resources all through North Africa and the Middle East. And so that's also part of our encirclement and containment strategy towards China and Russia. And this same report, you see, the Strategic Studies Institute from 2006, String of Pearls, also talks about the breakup of Pakistan, which I've also discussed in other videos. So this destabilization process will be used in Pakistan, used in all the countries on the borders of Russia and China, and then eventually they will be applied to Russia and China themselves. And interestingly enough, in this Kagan report, going back to that one, he says that China actually welcomes the U.S. presence in Asia as a check on Japan. And that is the nation they fear the most. And I will do more research on that because I find that a very interesting idea. I know they have a long and very testy history. So there's a lot of reason for a great deal of animosity between those two nations. But that said, China, the nation, is not nervous. It is the state that is nervous, because it is the state, the Chinese government, that is nervous about what is to come. That is why they fear integration and or containment, because of the pressure it will change, that will be applied to them to change in China, and they will lose their power, and something new will come about in China. So let's all try and keep that in mind. And once again, China is not our enemy. China has a government. It is the state, and they will do what they have to do to survive. And so there we have it. Vindication of my theory that I don't think there will be a war with China. I think that it will be integration, an offer of integration, containment, and then destabilization. I'm a useful idiot. Don't you be one too.